What remained attractive through all human history regardless of fashion and body trends? Eyes. Having symmetrical features. The most basic linchpin of attractiveness. Not just humans, but mammals, and I'm sure most of the animal kingdom are deeply biased towards symmetry. Even though most of us own fairly asymmetrical faces. But that's, in part, because so much of our brain space is devoted to processing facial differences, that the asymmetry is even apparent at all. Money/power. Most body and fashion trends throughout history began because they were, in one way or another, indicators of wealth. Some of the comments in this sub are perfect examples. That's because there is a biological reason to this that extend to most animals: access to resources, which is also considered power. Raising offsprings, or even laying them, and forgetting requires the mate to have access to a good patch of land where food/security is guaranteed, or at least have the necessary conditions for higher chances of success of the offsprings. Wealth/resources available equals chances of success of offsprings equals genes have a higher chance to passing down. To repeat that same cycle ad nauseam. Eventually entire species are shaped to this. In the case of mammals, where females are highly vulnerable during gestation, they require a safe area with access to food and protection from predators. Hunting or foraging food can become difficult, especially towards the later stages of pregnancy and the first few months/years of child rearing, depending on species. That's why males of mammals tend to have sexual dysmorphia of being larger, stronger, more aggressive, to fight for favorable patches of land with access to food and fewer predators. Humans are no different. Primates in general are social, but still patriarchal and territorial. The only thing that doesn't appear to have ever not turned on the majority of people in all societies is viewing two people having sex. Everything else, from dicks of any size, breasts, butts, etc., have had a varied history of sexualization and indifference. Definitely. The top comment says boobs, but even that changes per fashion. What size boobs should be, what shape they should be, how adorned they should be, how should their nipples be like, how covered they should be. Different cultures and tribes sexualizing boobs to different extents. Some places you can't show your boobs to anyone but your lover. Some places you roam around outside topless. Same with butts, pecs, genitalia, etc. They aren't as stagnant in fashion as they may seem. Watching people have sex is at least more common throughout the ages and places than that. Edit. So, in the book Patterns of Sexual Behavior, Cleland Ford and Frank Beach researched 191 small cultures, and only 13 of them found boobs to be extremely sexual, 9 of which preferred larger shapes and other 4 smaller shapes, or at least that was the preferred fashion at time of the research. So, yeah, boobs aren't sexualized everywhere every time equally. I don't know whether if it was explicitly expressed this way, but I'd guess that the golden ratio face has always been the preferred facial structure. Certainly, a symmetrical face. Hats. All throughout history, different forms of headwear have always signified things like wealth or power. When two armies fight each other, they usually are wearing different hats. I firmly believe it all boils down to one group of hat wearers hating another hat. Thus wars happen, based on mutual hatred for said other hat, from usually some other place. As George Carlin once said, you ever notice that? Anytime you see two groups of people who really hate each other, chances are good they're wearing different kind of hats. Keep an eye on that, it might be important. Symmetry, being fair-skinned, and looking well-groomed. These 3 traits represents the combination of strong genetics, being able to take care of yourself, and thus a potential family, and shows that you have access to either the time or the means to be presentable. Having fair skin in particular meant that you either had good enough immune system to ward off disease, or were high enough in the social hierarchy that you could avoid this. In modern times, we've had it so well, and have such fair skin on average, that most of us would probably look attractive by many early standards. Boobs. When I was studying Sanskrit in grad school, I definitely read a passage that was describing how beautiful a woman was. I remember that her waist was thin like a willow wand, and her breasts so large that she couldn't stand up straight. Health. There was a time and place where that consumptive look was considered romantic and desirable. We have letters with ladies upset at their rude health, and wishing they had pale, emaciated cheeks so they could look like they had advanced tuberculosis. A taste that arguably continues on today in certain parts of goth culture. That guy's dead wife. She certainly does to me. How do you feel seeing this joke over and over again? How did you feel when you originally saw it? This gets asked regularly. The first time I saw it I chuckled. Keep in mind it had been 9 years since she had died at that point. In grief therapy you hear about the new normal. This is when the initial shock has worn off and you make the decision to try and live again. Nothing is ever the same. It will never be normal again, but you can develop a new normal. So the raw pain of her loss had dimmed. Another thing is she herself made some very dark jokes about her terminal diagnosis, especially with my son, who was 18 at the time, but still living at home. It has been nearly 15 years now, and I think it is curious that it has persisted so long. Someone explained that my reaction is why it continues. At the time and ever since I've been fine with it. And why not? My life is characterized by trying to be the best version of myself I can. My motto is, don't be a jerk. It is easier to be kind and civil than to be mean and angry. One thing that I believe helps me is 99% of Redditors have been kind, concerned and supportive. They can see from the original comment and subsequent posts that I adored her. Muscles on men have always signaled an ability to protect and keep the family from rape/pillage. Wasn't there an era with fops and dandies where in Europe men were meant to be feminine to show they didn't need to do physical labor to provide? They were too rich for such nonsense? Reminds me of medieval Russia where nobles used to wear clothes with very long sleeves. I'm talking down to the ground long. It was used to show that they don't do any physical work, so they don't need clothes fitting for that type of work. And if they did have to do something, sleeves would get in the way, making them really ineffective workers. And now if the person is doing a bad job or not trying to do things right, we say that they're working with their sleeves down. That's really interesting. I wonder if there's any American correlation or trickle down from immigration. Because when somebody is about to engage in a hard task, we will say they're about to roll their sleeves up. I always imagined that to mean like rolling up a long sleeved shirt, so the shirt doesn't dirty, but now I'm wondering if it's a remote bastardization. Owning land. Our early ancestors didn't own land though. They were hunters and gatherers and shared everything with their tribe/family and with friends, if they were lucky to have any. Otherwise, it was your family versus whatever wild shit might be out there. Of course, some sort of territory marking was probably set up in small areas by each of those tribes that basically implied warning. This is not your territory, according to us. But that didn't mean a group that believed they were larger and more powerful wouldn't sweep through and take it for themselves. Our ancestors absolutely did own land, just not in a legal concept, since legality didn't exist yet. And instead of a piece of paper and a mutual agreement protecting you, that was overseen by a much larger territory administrator and a government surrounding him. This is local government. As we know, we had to be strong and smart so someone else wouldn't take our shit. Turns out, the best way to unite us into city-states, then empires, then fucking finally, shades much later was for the biggest tribes to bully or make one-sided deals with the weaker tribes and to incorporate them. Many years after that, virtually all the land is all taken up by some tribe or another, but is sold to individuals so that we keep up the peace agreement between the shades and the families that they contain, so at least most people within feel safe from other shades. A nice ass. Even if the mainstream perception of the right size differs, I suspect that in reality it doesn't as much. The shape doesn't. It's no wonder that nature formed boobs to imitate the shape of an ass for men to view if facing the women or having sex with her face to face, or that the sign of love, heart, is a woman's behind, and a big one by the way, shown with her bending over. Yes, my ladies, you are wearing and painting ass symbols everywhere. The Greek and Roman goddess Aphrodite or Venus, specifically the idea of her, as far as I'm aware, has more or less remained a pretty influential and attractive portrait of femininity, passion and romantic love, even as each generation believed that she looked suspiciously like their own beauty standards of their own time. In other words, she's always been an attractive symbol. It is why that has changed with the time. Clothes that fit. Baggy clothes and skin huggers go in and out, but clothes that fit are always in. Not really. In the 1800s the trend for women, baroque, was to not show their silhouette, which later evolved to neoclassical, which was basically loose fabric wrapped around you. Plus nowadays skinny jeans get a lot of hate. Like and subscribe for more edit videos.